The wind tore her dress open, and he didn't look away when he should have. The barn door slammed hard against the frame, wood cracking as the storm howled through Coyote Ridge. Iris stumbled, one hand gripping the post, the other clutching torn fabric that wouldn't stay closed. Dust stung her skin. Somewhere behind her, boots hit the ground fast, then stopped. Wyatt stood there, breath held, eyes fixed a moment too long, and something in that silence felt louder than the storm. What did he see that made him freeze like that? Tell me what you think. The wind came down off the mesas without warning. One minute the yard lay quiet under a pale afternoon sun. The next it roared through Coyote Ridge like something alive. Dust lifted in sheets. Fences rattled. A loose tin panel slammed hard against the side of the barn, again and again, like a gunshot that wouldn't stop. Inside the main house, someone shouted. Outside, men ran for the corrals. Iris Bennett was already moving. She had been crossing the yard with a bucket when the first gust hit. It nearly took her off her feet. She dropped the bucket without looking back and ran straight for the horse barn, her skirt snapping hard around her legs. The stall doors were banging open. A mare kicked against the wood, eyes rolling white. Another horse shoved against the rail, spooked by the noise. The big front doors of the barn slammed inward, then flew back out, hinges screaming. Iris grabbed the nearest rope and pulled. "Easy," she said, though her voice barely carried in the wind. Dust stung her eyes. Her hair came loose from its tie, whipping across her face. She wiped it back with the back of her wrist and leaned her shoulder into the door, trying to force it shut before the next gust hit. It came harder. The door jerked wide, yanking her with it. Her boots slid across the packed dirt. The wood edge struck her shoulder, spun her halfway around, and something tore. A sharp rip, loud even through the storm. Her dress gave way at the shoulder seam, fabric splitting down along her back. Cold air hit her skin. The loose cloth snapped wildly, caught in the wind like a flag. For a second, she didn't move. Then she reached back, trying to gather the torn fabric, but the wind pulled it away again, exposing more than she could cover with one hand. The mare kicked again. The door slammed. "Iris!" The voice cut through the storm. Wyatt Cole came around the side of the barn at a run, coat half-buttoned, hat gone. Dust streaked his face, his shirt already darkened with sweat and grit. He grabbed the outer handle of the door and threw his weight into it, forcing it inward. "Hold it!" he shouted. She did. Her hand slipped once, then found the edge again. Together they shoved the door shut against the wind. The latch caught with a hard snap. For a moment, everything held. The noise dropped just enough to hear the horses settling, their breathing still sharp but no longer panicked. The worst of the gust passed over the roof in a long, low howl. Iris let go of the door. She turned, and that was when Wyatt saw her. The torn line of fabric, the exposed curve of her shoulder, the way the dress hung open down her back, clinging in places, pulled away in others by the restless wind still slipping through the cracks. He didn't step back. He didn't speak. He just stood there, looking. Not quick. Not by accident. Long enough for her to feel it. Her hand tightened on the fabric, pulling it across herself, but it didn't cover much. Dust clung to her skin. Her breathing was still uneven from the struggle with the door. For a second, neither of them moved. The storm outside rattled the walls again, but inside the barn, the space between them held still. Close. Too close. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Something shifted in his expression, gone as soon as it came. He looked away. Without a word, he pulled off his coat and stepped forward, draping it over her shoulders. The heavy canvas settled around her, smelling faintly of leather, smoke, and sun. "Get inside," he said. His voice came out rougher than it should have. Iris nodded once. She didn't thank him. She didn't look at him again. She pulled the coat tighter around herself and moved past him, boots steady now, though the wind still pushed hard against the barn doors behind them. Wyatt stayed where he was. He listened to her footsteps fade across the yard, swallowed by the storm. Only then did he reach up and drag a hand across his face, leaving a streak of dust along his cheek. Outside, the wind kept howling over Coyote Ridge. Inside the barn, the latch held. But something else had already come loose, and there was no fixing it with rope or nails. By morning, the storm had passed. The yard lay quiet under a washed-out sky. Dust had settled into a thin film over everything. Fence posts, wagon wheels, the porch railing. A broken bucket rolled slowly near the well, nudged by a leftover breeze. Iris Bennett was already in the kitchen before sunrise. The stove had been lit an hour earlier. Coffee simmered low in a dented pot. She stood at the long wooden table, sleeves rolled, kneading dough with steady hands. The tear in her dress had been mended, but the stitch line showed, uneven and dark against the faded fabric. She kept her eyes on the dough. Footsteps came and went behind her. Men passing through for coffee before heading out. Chairs scraped. Cups set down hard. No one spoke to her directly. But they looked. Not long. Not openly. Just enough. She reached for the flour sack, dusted her hands, and turned the dough once more. The rhythm didn't change. At the far end of the room, Martha Crowley stood near the cupboard, measuring beans into a tin cup. She didn't look up when she spoke. "Best keep your head down today." Iris didn't answer right away. The dough pressed flat beneath her palms. She folded it over once, twice. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly. Martha nodded once, as if that settled it. "Mr. Cole likes things running smooth," she added. "No room for distractions." The word hung in the air. Iris wiped her hands on a cloth and moved to the stove. She lifted the lid, checked the heat, then set it back without a sound. By mid-morning, the ranch had found its rhythm again. Hammers tapped where boards had split. A wagon creaked past the gate, loaded with feed sacks. Somewhere out by the north fence, a man whistled low to calm a restless horse. Wyatt Cole stayed outside. He worked longer than usual, checked posts that didn't need checking, walked the far boundary, where the land sloped toward dry creek bed. Anyone watching might have thought he was making up for the storm. He didn't come near the house. At noon, Iris carried a tray of biscuits to the side table. Steam curled up from the basket. She set it down, turned, and nearly stepped into someone coming through the back door. Eleanor Whitmore paused just inside. Her dress was pale blue, clean despite the dust outside. Gloves in one hand. A small leather satchel hung at her wrist. She smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough. "You must be the new help," she said. Iris nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor's gaze moved over her. Not unkind. Not soft either. "My father says Mr. Cole keeps a fine place," she went on. "It shows." She set her gloves on the table, glanced toward the window, then back again. "You bake?" "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor picked up a biscuit, broke it open, and tasted it. She chewed slowly, then gave a small nod. "Not bad." She left it at that. When she stepped out toward the front porch, the room seemed to settle again, like something had passed through without stopping. Iris went back to the sink. Water ran over her hands, cold at first, then warming as the kettle fed into it. She scrubbed a plate that didn't need scrubbing. Late afternoon came quieter. Most of the men were still out. The house held a kind of stillness that came after work, but before supper. Light stretched long across the floorboards. Iris was alone at the stove. She had set a small pan aside, working on something extra. Apples sliced thin, a pinch of cinnamon, a little sugar she'd saved from the last supply run into town. She pressed the crust down with the back of a spoon, careful not to tear it. The back door opened. She didn't turn. Bootsteps crossed the floor. Slower this time. She kept her hands steady, adjusting the edge of the crust. A chair scraped lightly behind her. Then nothing. No orders, no questions. Just presence. After a moment, she reached for the knife, cut a small piece from the edge, and set it on a plate. She didn't look up as she slid it back across the table. For testing, she said. Silence stretched. Then the faint sound of a fork against tin. She could hear him breathe. Could hear the small shift of weight as he leaned back slightly. The crackle of the stove filled the space between. A few seconds passed. Then he said, low, almost to himself, "Tastes like something I remember." She didn't ask what. She wiped her hands again, slower this time. Behind her, the chair moved. He set the fork down, not loud, not careless, just deliberate. She felt it without turning. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, just enough. "You fixed the tear." "Yes, sir." Another pause. He didn't say anything else. When she finally turned, the chair was empty. The back door stood half open, letting in a thin line of wind that stirred the edge of the tablecloth. She walked over and closed it. Her hand rested on the wood a second longer than it needed to. Outside, the sun dipped low over Coyote Ridge. Inside, the kitchen held its quiet again. But something had shifted. Not gone. Just waiting. The sky turned before supper. It came in low and gray from the west, rolling over the ridge in a slow, heavy line. By the time the last of the men washed up at the pump, the first drops had already started to fall. Big ones, far apart, darkening the dust where they hit. By nightfall, the rain settled in. Steady, cold, unrelenting. Iris wrapped a shawl tight around her shoulders and stepped out the back door with a small bundle of firewood pressed to her chest. The kitchen fire had dropped low, and Mrs. Crowley had gone up to her room without a word. The yard was slick underfoot. Mud clung to her boots, pulling at each step. The lantern by the shed swung in the wind, throwing long shadows across the ground. Somewhere in the dark, a loose chain tapped against wood in a slow, uneven rhythm. She kept her head down and moved toward the woodpile. The rain picked up. It ran down her neck, soaked into the fabric at her shoulders, darkened the mended seam along her back. She shifted the bundle higher, trying to keep it dry, and turned toward the house again. Her foot slipped. It happened quick. One moment steady, the next gone. Her boot slid sideways in the mud, and she went down hard, the wood scattering from her arms, rolling into the dark. The breath left her. For a second, she stayed there, one hand pressed into the mud, the other gripping her knee. Rain hit the ground around her, fast now, loud against the boards of the porch. She tried to push herself up. Her leg buckled. "Iris!" The door slammed open. Light cut through the rain as Wyatt stepped out, lantern in one hand. He didn't hesitate, didn't slow. He crossed the yard in a few strides, boots sinking deep, coat already soaked through. "You hurt?" "I'm fine," she said, though her voice came uneven. He didn't argue. He crouched down beside her, setting the lantern low. His hand found her arm, firm, steady. He pulled her up before she could brace herself, one arm sliding around her back to keep her from falling again. She stiffened, not pulling away, not leaning in either, just still. Rain ran off his hat brim, down his jaw, along the collar of his shirt. Up close, she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his breath came just a little heavier than before. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "I've done it before." His hand stayed where it was. Too long. Long enough for her to notice. long enough for him to notice that she noticed. He let go, not all at once. Slow, like he was measuring the space he was leaving behind. They stood there under the edge of the porch. Water dripped from the roof in steady lines. The lantern flickered between them, casting light up from below. It caught in her eyes, dark and steady, and for a second he didn't look away. "You're bleeding," he said. She glanced down. A scrape along her knee. Mud and a thin line of red, already washing clean in the rain. "It's nothing." He didn't move, didn't step back. His hand lifted, almost without thought, stopped halfway, hovered. She didn't step away. Didn't move closer either, just stood there, rain soaking through both of them, the space between closing without either one deciding it. The wind shifted. A loose strand of her hair caught against his sleeve. He noticed, reached to move it, slow, careful, and then he stopped. His jaw tightened. "This shouldn't happen," he said, not loud, not angry, just final. He stepped back. The space returned all at once, cold, empty. Iris bent, gathered what wood she could reach, cradling it again against her chest. The pieces were wet now, heavy. She didn't look at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. He nodded once. Didn't speak again. She went inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click, cutting off the sound of the rain. Wyatt stayed where he was. The lantern swung slightly in the wind. The light moved across his boots, his hands, the ground where she had fallen. He stood there a long time, long after the rain softened, long after the yard went still again, like something had almost happened, and the fact that it didn't felt worse. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. By morning, the yard was quiet again. Mud held the shape of every footprint from the night before. Wagon tracks had filled with shallow water. A single boot print led from the porch steps into the open yard, then disappeared where the ground turned hard. Inside the kitchen, Iris stood at the basin. Water ran steady over her hands. The same plate had been in her grip longer than it should have. She turned it once, twice, then set it aside without looking at it. Voices drifted in from the front hall, low, careful, not meant for her, but not hidden either. Whitmore girl's been coming near every afternoon, bank money behind her. Railroad, too. Makes sense, don't it? Man like Cole needs backing now. The voices moved away. Iris kept her hands in the water. Cold had long since turned to numb. She didn't pull back. Later that morning, a wagon rolled through the front gate. Clean horses, polished harness, the kind that didn't belong to ranch work. A driver stepped down first, then opened the door. Eleanor Whitmore stepped out. Her dress was lighter today, cream with small blue stitching along the hem, gloves buttoned tight at the wrist. She paused just long enough to take in the house, the yard, the men working the fence line. Then she walked straight up the porch steps like she had always known where they led. Wyatt met her at the door. He didn't smile, but he didn't send her away either. Iris saw it through the kitchen window. She didn't stop what she was doing. She reached for a cloth, dried her hands, then picked up a sack of flour and carried it across the room like nothing had shifted at all. By noon, the word had settled into the house. Not loud, not official, just there. "Engagement," someone said near the back steps. "Rail contract depends on it," another answered. "Whitmore don't tie his money to anything uncertain." The words passed like wind under a door. Iris stood at the table, slicing bread. The knife paused once, then continued. Evening came early that day. Clouds held the light down low, and the wind picked up again, though softer this time, a reminder more than a warning. Supper was quiet. Wyatt sat at the far end of the table, Eleanor beside him. She spoke more than he did, laughed lightly at something that didn't carry far enough to hear. Iris moved in and out of the room with the others, refilling cups, clearing plates. At one point she reached for Wyatt's glass. Their hands almost touched. He pulled his back first. Not fast. Just enough. She set the glass down and stepped away. No one said anything. By nightfall, the house settled into its usual stillness. Footsteps faded upstairs. A door closed, then another. Iris remained in the kitchen. The last plate sat in the basin. She rinsed it, dried it, and set it with the others. The fire burned low behind her, casting long shadows across the floor. She stood there a moment, then she moved. Her room was small, narrow bed, a single chair, a wooden crate at the foot with everything she owned folded inside. She didn't rush. She took out the cloth bag first, set it on the bed, then the extra dress. The Bible, a small tin cup wrapped in cloth to keep it from denting. Each item placed with care. No hesitation, no second look. Outside, the wind picked up again. Not a storm, just enough to move the loose boards along the side of the house. A steady creak. She tied the bag closed, slung it over her shoulder. Then she stopped. Her hand rested on the edge of the crate. Fingers curled slightly, then loosened. Nothing left. She turned and walked out. The back door opened without a sound. The yard stretched wide under a dim sky. The ground still soft from the night before. Her boots sank slightly with each step, leaving clear marks behind her. She didn't look back. Halfway across the yard, a voice cut through the wind. Iris. She stopped. Not because he called, because she knew he would. Wyatt stood near the porch, coat thrown over one shoulder, shirt sleeves rolled. He hadn't taken time to button anything, like he had come out in a hurry. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. She adjusted the strap of her bag. Yes. He stepped closer. The distance between them closed, but not enough to touch. You didn't say anything. There's nothing to say. That's not true. The wind shifted again, pushing dust along the ground between them. He ran a hand through his hair, then let it fall. That arrangement, he said, slower now. It's not what it looks like. She didn't answer. It's for the contract, he went on. Railroad won't sign unless you marry her. He didn't deny it. It keeps things steady here, he said. Keeps the land. She nodded once, then shifted the bag higher on her shoulder. And where does that leave me? She asked. The question didn't rise, didn't accuse, it just stayed there. Wyatt looked at her, really looked this time. Mud at the hem of her dress, the mended seam at her shoulder, the way she stood, straight, not waiting for anything from him. I was trying to keep things from getting worse, he said. She held his gaze. Then let it bury me too. The words landed quiet, but they didn't move. He stepped forward. Iris. She stepped back. Just once. Enough. The space returned. You don't get to decide what I carry, she said. No anger, no raised voice, just a line drawn. Rain began again, light at first, then steady. She turned, walked past him. He didn't reach out this time, didn't call her name again. He stood there as the rain soaked through his shirt, watching the path she took through the yard, watching the marks her boots left behind fill slowly with water. By the time she reached the gate, the tracks had already begun to fade. She didn't look back, not once. By morning, the rain had washed the yard clean. No footprints, No sign of where she had gone, only the gate, left slightly open, creaking in the wind. Wyatt stood there longer than he meant to, hat in his hand, coat still damp from the night before. He stared at the ground like something might still be there if he waited long enough. It wasn't. Behind him, the ranch moved on. Men fed the horses. Tools struck wood. Someone laughed near the well, too loud for the hour. Life settling back into place the way it always did. He turned away. Inside, the house felt different, quieter, though nothing had changed. The same table, the same chairs. A cup left near the sink, still faintly marked by where it had been held. He picked it up, set it back down. That afternoon, Eleanor Whitmore arrived again. Same wagon, same careful step onto the porch, same small smile when she saw him. "You look tired, Mr. Cole. Didn't sleep much." She studied him a moment, then glanced past his shoulder toward the empty yard. "I heard one of your girls left." He didn't answer. Eleanor removed her gloves slowly, folding them into her palm. "My father sent word this morning," she said. "He's ready to move forward. Papers can be drawn by the end of the week." Wyatt leaned against the doorframe. The wood creaked slightly under his weight. "That soon?" "It's what we discussed." He nodded. Looked past her, out toward the ridge. Wind moved through the dry grass in long, slow waves. "Contracts don't wait," she added. "No," he said. "They don't." She stepped closer. "You'd be making the right choice." He looked at her then. Really looked. Her dress, neat and untouched by the dust. The careful way she held herself. The certainty in her voice. Everything about it made sense. Everything about it felt wrong. "I can't do it." The words came out quiet, but they didn't move. Eleanor blinked once. "I'm sorry?" "I won't sign," he said. "Not like this." A pause, then a small, measured breath. "This isn't about sentiment, Mr. Cole." "No. It's about land, security. The future of this ranch. I know what it's about." "Then why?" He pushed off the doorframe. "Because I already made a choice," he said. Her expression shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Something sharper. "You don't mean that, girl." He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Eleanor let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "You're willing to throw this away for something that won't hold." Wyatt stepped past her. "If it doesn't hold," he said, "that's on me." He didn't stop to hear the rest. By sundown, the ranch knew. Not from him. From the silence that followed. No papers signed. No agreement sealed. A contract left hanging somewhere between town and ridge. Men worked slower that evening. Eyes followed him without meaning to. He saddled his horse without a word. Checked the cinch twice. Tightened it again. "Heading out?" one of the hands asked. "For a while." "Where to?" Wyatt swung up into the saddle. "North Road first," he said. "Then wherever it leads." The man nodded. Didn't ask again. The trail out of Coyote Ridge ran dry this time of year. Hard ground. Long stretches without shade. A place where sound carried farther than it should. He rode through the night. Stopped once at a pump near a closed feed store. Let the horse drink. Didn't go inside. By mid-morning, the land changed. Less dust. More scrub. A small town set low against the hills, smoke rising from 2 chimneys and a narrow boardwalk running along a line of shops. He slowed near the edge, tied his horse outside a building with a crooked sign. School. Hand-painted. Letters faded. Inside, Voices. Soft, uneven. Children reading. He stood at the door a moment. Didn't push it open. Just listened. A voice moved among them. Steady. Patient. Correcting a word. Waiting. Letting them try again. He knew it before he saw her. He stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of chalk and wood smoke. Sunlight came through a narrow window, falling across a small blackboard and a row of rough benches. Iris stood near the front, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, a piece of chalk between her fingers. She looked up. The room went quiet. Not all at once. One voice fading, then another, until only the wind outside could be heard. Their eyes met, same as before, but not the same. She didn't move toward him, didn't step back either, just stood there. The chalk left a faint line across the board as her hand lowered. "You can finish the line," she said to the boy in front. Her voice didn't break. The boy nodded, turned back to the board. Wyatt took a step inside, then stopped. "I won't ask you to come back," he said. The words landed in the room like something set down carefully. The children watched, didn't understand, but didn't look away. He kept his hands at his sides. "Didn't reach for her, I'll stay," he added. "If you let me." Silence held, long enough for the wind to shift outside, long enough for something to settle. Iris looked at him, then at the room, then back again. She set the chalk down, walked past him, out the door. He followed. Not close, just enough. Outside, the air felt clearer. The road stretched out behind him. Ahead of them, the small town moved at its own pace. A wagon rolled past. A man tipped his hat. A dog barked once, then quieted. She stopped near the fence, turned. He didn't speak again, didn't fill the space, just stood there, waiting, not for forgiveness, not for an answer, just waiting. And maybe that's where the truth of it lives. Not in the moment he found her again, not in the words he chose, but in the space he finally gave her, the space to decide if she wanted him there at all. Now, if you were standing where she stood, would you turn back? After being overlooked, after being hidden away like something that didn't belong in the daylight, would you risk it again? Would you believe that a man who once let you walk away could learn to stand beside you instead? Because sometimes love doesn't fail in the beginning. Sometimes it fails in the silence, in the hesitation. In the moment, someone chooses safety over truth, and sometimes it comes back quieter, not asking to be followed, not demanding to be forgiven, just asking to be allowed, to stay. That's the kind of love that doesn't shout. It waits, it learns, and if it's real, it stands where you can see it. So tell me, what would you have done in her place? And if stories like this stay with you a little longer than expected, there are more waiting just down the road. Stories about people who lost their way and somehow found something worth holding on to again. You're always welcome to come back and sit a while.